we expect our global power demand to at least double or even triple by 2040. In 2021, renewable accounted for 16% of BASF global power demand. By 2030, our projection is that this figure will rise to more than 60%. This means that by 2030, the company projects that 100% of its 2021 global power demand will be obtained from renewable sources.
Hello and welcome to Energy Unplugged by Aurora. This podcast features various experts from Aurora having in-depth conversations with key industry leaders, policymakers and academics from all over the world. It explores the hottest topics across the energy market and gives a unique perspective on major energy issues.
Hi, and welcome to Energy Unplugged. My name is Manuel Koehler. I'm the Managing Director for Europe, Middle East and Africa of Aurora. And in this episode, I'm speaking to Horatio Evers. Horatio is the Managing Director of BASF Renewables. And what makes me particularly excited about today's episode is that I think BASF is on a quite impressive and partly daunting journey to decarbonize one of the biggest industrial players in the world. Horatio leads the unit within BASF that is responsible for strategy and execution to build and source all the green energy needed for this transformation. Hello, Horatio.
Yeah, hi, Manuel.
Last time we met in Berlin when you visited us, you had to transit in the city. You rented a bike, and bikes are even featured on your CV on the website. So what's this thing about you and bikes, and what's your favorite model currently, if you have one?
Yeah, hi, Manuel. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation for this podcast. I think it's a great idea talking about energy-related topics, but on the other hand, I love to talk about bicycles as well, of course. And you are right. So bicycles are part of my personal DNA, and I try to make it part of the company DNA as well. So we have many bike riders here as colleagues. And when we go on business trips, we try to avoid taxis and public transport. And we will use bikes when we have the possibility. This is, of course, everybody can do what he wants, but most of us are using bikes. And my personal experience with bikes, I start biking very early, I think with the age of 3 or 4 already. And I love all kinds of bikes, like mountain biking. When I used to live in Switzerland in that time, I love to ride in the mountains, a little bit downhill, not too dangerous, and but as well road biking. And I'm a bike collector, so I'm collecting old Italian steel bikes from the 70s and 80s. And yes, that brings me I would say my balance in life, beside thinking about renewable energy. And that makes a lot of fun. Yeah,
really nice. Thanks for this background. And it sounds like your history with bikes goes even a bit personally, it's even a bit longer than your history with renewables or chemicals. But of course, we're not just here to talk about bikes today, unfortunately. But maybe let's start with a bit of a personal introduction. What is your role at BASF?
Actually, I'm now with close to 20 years with BASF, and I worked for the utility industry before I joined BASF. And I would say I'm working from the very beginning of a liberalized market environment in Europe in the energy industry. And then I came to BASF in 2005, and I started building up a power CO2 gas portfolio management for the European sites for BASF. And made my journey through BASF now in the position of the CEO of the renewable energy company. And when you work for BASF, I think you have the possibility to really work in all regions. So I had projects in Asia, I had projects in US, and not always energy related, chemical related as well. And I lived with my family in Singapore for a couple of years. I lived in Switzerland for 5 years, as already mentioned. And so since 3 years, I'm back in Germany in the headquarters. And we started with the project of backward integration into renewable energy. And today we have our own company, which takes care for the whole topic.
Yeah, super interesting. And we will definitely dive deeper into that. But before we do that, and I suspect most of our listeners will actually have heard about BASF, but to bring everyone on the same page, what does BASF do in simple terms, and why is energy so important to you?
Yeah, I think BASF is actually a chemical company, and I know many people know BASF from the tape production from the past, but of course we do not produce tapes anymore. But we produce many chemicals. So BASF at the moment is the biggest chemical company in the world, and we are creating chemistry for a sustainable future. That is what we are claiming. And what we mean is we combine economic success with environmental protection and social responsibility. And our chemistries are used in almost all industries, from automotive to nutrition. Yeah, so at the end, we are producing nobody knows exactly, between 35 and 45,000 different chemical products. Yeah. And how do we do that? I have more than 110,000 colleagues around the world, and 50% of our business is in Europe, 25% in US, 25% in Asia. Mm-hmm. We are active around the world with in more than 90 countries. And I would say, heart of production is a Verbundsite concept. And a Verbund is always several chemical power plants on one place. So that is highly efficient, because we are, of course, savings in transportation, and we can use all products what we produce in the next step of the value chain. Mm-hmm. And so it's very sustainable. And on top of that, besides 6 Verbund sites around the world, we have 230 additional production sites worldwide. Yeah, and our Verbund sites are, I would say, the biggest one is in Ludwigshafen in Germany. Here we are 30,000 people working in Ludwigshafen in the Verbund. And we have Verbund sites in US and in Asia. And at the moment, we are planning a new one in south of China, in Zhanjiang. And that will be the first 100% green Verbund site of BASF.
That's really interesting, and obviously a huge portfolio. And we probably come to the role of energy anyways in a bit more detail in the future. But I mean, the starting point, as you said, is also big ambitions in terms of climate protection. Could you talk a little bit about your aims for the future regards climate protection?
Yeah, I think our contribution to achieving the Paris Climate Agreement is actually breakdown in our BASF climate targets. We want to reduce our absolute CO2 emissions by 25% by 2030, compared with our 2018 emissions. And we are committing to achieving net zero emissions at 2050. These changes that are backed by investments of up to 4 billion euros until 2030. And that, of course, means big steps for us. And we already taken these steps since 1990, and we reduce already 54% of our emissions compared to 1990. Yeah, and I think that is our goal, what we set for BASF.
Yeah, and it's a big goal, and it's probably also a long journey until then. How do you envisage to reduce your CO2 emissions further? I mean, like 50% roundabout since 1990 is a big step already. But like, what needs to happen next, basically, and what aspects? I think that's also an interesting question. Does a large company like yours need to consider on that journey?
Yeah, let me first explain how we tackle emissions at BASF. We focus on 2 dimensions. One dimension is our sites and our production, and the other one is our products. With the technical measures at our production sites, we directly address our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Mm-hmm. These are the direct emissions from our production processes and from the generation of steam and electricity. As you might know, we have on our Verbund sites huge CHP power plants where we burn natural gas and produce steam and power for our own consumption. And of course, on top of that, we purchase energy from outside. We are directly responsible for these emissions, and they are reflecting our corporate targets, and we can address them by technical measures and by making investments at our sites. However, our customers are not interested in our progress at site level. They want products with net zero or low carbon footprints. Our products offering to customers include the Scope 3 emissions, therefore, associated with the raw material we purchase from our suppliers. And we make these product-related emissions transparent from cradle to gray in the form of product carbon footprints that we calculate for around, as I said, for up to 45,000 different sales products. And we have identified 5 major levels to address and reduce the main sources for greenhouse gas emissions. And now we are talking about green power at the end in main focus. So the first measure is gray to green, and the power to steam levels focus on avoiding CO2 emissions from the production of electricity and steam, emissions from our upstream, and to lesser extent downstream processes are being tackled by new technologies, which we are in the process of inventing and invented already. And we also use a lever of bio-based feedstocks to reduce emissions by increasingly replacing fossil feedstocks, renewable raw material derived from various value chains, as you know, vegetable oils, fat, grains, sugars, and so on. And lastly, these levels are supported by a large number of operational excellent measures across the company that focus on efficiency and our CO2 emissions. Temporary measures is to push the period until new technology are really implied big scale. We will also consider external offset measures to a limited extent. If we purchase certificates, for example, we will only use high quality criteria, e.g. from additional assets only. And I would like to emphasize that we will develop many projects and technologies in partnerships, and this allows us to accelerate or generate additional value together. We have announced partnership with Siemens Energy, MAN, as well as SABIC and Linde. For example, you could read it in the press, we are developing or inventing electrical cracker technology, which will substitute our existing technology in the future. And I think the main aspect from my perspective is switching power to renewable energy in the future. And that will have, of course, a huge impact in reducing CO2 emissions in the next 10 or 15 years. And that is the main reason why we founded the BASF Renewable Energy, because power is not only a feedstock for us anymore. Green power is becoming a strategic feedstock, and it's definitely needed to execute our strategy in the future.
Yeah, super interesting. And that's obviously also how we got in touch a few years ago. And maybe a good point in time to dive a bit deeper on BASF Renewable Energy and the company that you're heading. What are you doing and what's your role in this transformation that you just laid out?
Yeah, I think renewable power turned into a strategic feedstock. So that means just simply buying power from the market is not enough. I think if you are dependent within your core business on such a feedstock, you are thinking a little bit further behind sourcing and procurement strategies. So therefore, we decided for a sourcing strategy which is based on a make and buy approach. And therefore we are working in parallel. So on one hand, we are sourcing PPA contracts in the market at the moment, and we enable new investments. That is very important for us, that we support the energy transformation, because at the end we need a huge amount of power for our business, for the chemical business, and we are not the only one. And on the other hand, we are looking for partnerships with partners of the utility industry to build to develop and build own green power productions. And the main focus at the moment is offshore. Yeah? And that is our strategy. I think for doing that, you need a professional setup. You cannot do it as part, I would say, of a procurement department. And therefore, we founded the BASF Renewable Energy, where we cover all the necessary expertise under one roof to operate that business.
Yeah, we should definitely jump into that in a second. But before we do that, could you speak a little bit more about the internal process to get to these targets? So what happened in the lead up, and how are they affecting BASF's business more broadly now?
Yeah, I think that the BASF Renewable Energy company, of course, we are part of a larger context in BASF. So we are not an independent energy company, which is now a competitor to other utilities. So our main focus is clearly to supply green power to the BASF business in the future and to secure that volumes. Yeah. The BASF, the chemical BASF business has taken key decisions to radically change the global business model with new technologies, implementing renewable power and circularity. Yeah? Going along with the big change in the mindset towards net zero emissions and sustainability, we are implementing this new strategy at the moment. Today in our company, all areas from logistics to business development to management have their eyes on the company's overall CO2 footprint. Key question, how do we achieve net zero without ongoing state support? Because that is very important to us. We do not want to be dependent on the state, and we do not want to actually build up a business model, a chemical business model based on subsidies. That is not our main focus. So very challenging for a scientific-led company to define targets for 2050 that cannot be fully subsidized yet, because they are so far away and require technologies that do not even exist yet. So for BASF, that was a big step to commit to targets in 2050 and to actually, going on that journey without knowing the exactly measures what we have, for example, in 15, 20 years to achieve the targets. Yeah, we have set ourselves extremely ambitious targets for which we do not have 100% of answers yet, how to achieve them. These targets have yielded a momentum of innovation, on the other hand, within BASF for new technologies and investments, such as in renewable energies. Everyone is now working towards the same direction, net zero. And that is an important, I would say, part of the momentum, what we see at the moment.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I can fully see how difficult it is to embark on a journey where you don't know what each and every step on the way looks like. Let's maybe jump a bit more into the specifics. You mentioned a couple of themes already, but to talk numbers, so BASF Ludwigshafen, the big Verbund site you have in Germany, alone has a power demand of 6 terawatt hours now, and that is expected to grow even further in the next decades. How are you planning to get all of this?
Yeah, I think that is a really good question. The power demand of Ludwigshafen site equals 1% of the total German power demand. It's equal to 2 million households. It is an amazing number. And that is before we start electrifying our chemical processes. Yeah. The replacement of the gray to green energy will have a large impact on reducing our emissions in the coming years. And with the increasing electrification of our processes, example, the e-cracker, what I already mentioned, we expect our global power demand to at least double or even triple by 2040. In 2021, renewable accounted for 16% of BASF global power demand. By 2030, our projection is that this figure will rise to more than 60%. This means that by 2030, the company projects that 100% of its 2021 global power demand will be obtained from renewable sources. To cover our demand for renewable energy and power, we have to distribute our capital wisely and are therefore pursuing a make and buy strategy, what I already explained. Yeah? So selectively investing in building and expanding own renewable assets to secure long-term supply at producer economics. For example, our joint offshore wind farm, HKZ, in the Dutch North Sea, together with our partner Vattenfall and Allianz. We actually announced that already, and we are partly operational. We received already first power this year, and we are looking forward to bring that power, at least the green attribute, over to our Belgian production and German production. Once it's fully operational, it will be the world's biggest offshore wind park at the moment, with a rated capacity of 1.5 gig and the first subsidy-free wind farm in Europe. So we are very proud of that investment. Yeah, I think we are the first one of the industrial players who made that step. Yeah. On the other hand, we buy power from the market as well. We purchase green power from third parties based on long-term supply agreements. And for example, we have we signed a 25 years PPA contract for Spanish power with Engie, and another one with a Danish company called Ørsted for German investment. And of course, we support here merchant market investments with our offtake guarantee over the next 25 years, and making this kind of investment in projects bankable. Our make and buy strategy aims to provide the secure and efficient supply of renewable energy at competitive prices for BASF, and will allow us actually to implement our overall strategy for producing sustainable chemicals in the future.
Yeah. I guess that's one of the interesting aspects here, because I think for now, at least, it's one of the distinguishing factors in your approach to decarbonizing industry, because most industrial off-takers look into PPAs and certificates as their main tool to decarbonize. So how do you distinguish, like, what's the best approach in this situation? You mentioned make and buy, so obviously both routes play a role there. Under which circumstances would you rather consider building your own assets or buying them instead of buying green power directly via PPAs, etc.? Do you expect this to change in the future?
Yeah, I think for me it's important to have the optionalities to decide where and how I can source electricity in the green electricity in the future. It's clear renewable power is the strategic feedstock of BASF in the future. And BASF has always backward integrated into strategic feedstocks, not only now into renewable feedstocks or power, if you compare that to natural gas, for example. And I think these kind of strategies give us a strong advantage because we have a deep insight of the value chain, and we are backward integrated into producer economics at the end. But of course, the advantage of the PPA contracts is we need less capital, and we do not need to invest, and therefore I think the combination between make and buy is a perfect approach. And of course, it depends where you act. I think the situation in US, for example, could be different from Asia, China to Europe. So, but it's clear the advantages in the make is we have a high amount of renewable power at producer economics for competitive prices. We have the flexibility, the independence from suppliers, taking energy transition and decarbonization in our own hands and support it, and giving a clear sign to society as well that BASF is supporting the transformation. The disadvantage of make is, of course, it is a high investment. So, you need, I would say, a solid foundation of know-how to operate these big projects. But however, we are really convinced that we have to get active ourselves to really make a difference at the moment, especially in that situation.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And maybe to come back on the second aspect of my question, if like understanding producer economics is one of the driving forces to also look into make instead of just buying PPAs. Do you expect this to change in the future, or do you narrow down with your make approach on certain technologies, for example, or regions?
Yeah, I think it's really a tailor-made, a specific decision. Yeah. And I think based on our experience, you cannot act based on a generalistic approach here. So you need to have the foundation of knowledge and capabilities, and then you have a certain area, and then you have your tool set, and then you implement. Yeah, you are creating a strategy, and then you implement. Yeah, you need to consider carefully of all commercial, technical, regulatory, and partnership aspects. I think. You have these kind of difference from country to country. Yeah? If advantages outweigh disadvantages, we opt for the make part. Yeah, because based on our experience, if you have the hand on the asset and on producer economics, then you have a long-term hedge, and that is actually what we want to achieve. Do we need to invest 100% by BASF? No, we are looking for strong partners, for strategic partners. In the market, and we develop these kind of investment and projects together.
Yeah, great. And I mean, you mentioned partners and the importance of them already. I guess it's both investors and developers. Could you share a little bit about what kind of partnerships are important for you, and what makes a good partner in a sense?
Yeah, economically attractive power generation source is based on favorable capex. So, of course, that is defining what kind of partners do we take on board. Own use of green attribute for BASF is important with our subsidies and portfolio fit. And that is a kind of parameters what needs to be accepted by the partners, of course, as well. And why? I think we're coming to that a little bit later. Potential partner is complementing BASF strengths. Yeah, here we are talking about experience. Potential project pipeline, for example, capabilities, strategic fit. Yeah, and strategic fit means this is a long-term journey when you decide to go in these kind of projects together. This is not only a contract for 2 to 5 years, this is for 25, 35 years partnership. So strategic fit is very important here. Yeah. And maybe one other aspect is we are looking for a diverse project pipeline and a diverse, I would say, portfolio with partners. So it depends on the region where we are. We can imagine to operate with different partners in different regions, of course. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, really interesting. Thanks. Maybe switching focus a little bit and turning to policy. So BASF has been quite vocal on changes in regulation in the past. So what are the main changes that need to happen in your perspective, and why?
Yeah, that is a good question, Manuel. Thank you very much. I think, first of all, we need the right regulational framework. We see a tendency of intense market intervention that are sometimes even preventing access of industrial power off-takers to renewable power. For example, auction regimes with two-sided contract for differences, CFDs, where the states are skimming profits from offshore wind farms, and the result is that power cannot be even used by the industry, or industry is not getting access to producer economics. This is extremely risky, as we are fully committed to decarbonize in accordance with EU targets, while at the same time legislation prevents us from accessing many projects. Clearly, we are advocating for rather liberal power markets because we see that projects like HKZ in the Netherlands don't need state support anymore to succeed.
Yeah, very interesting. And obviously was a hot debate in Germany, which I guess at least so far has turned in your favor when it comes to CFDs. If we look a bit like moving away from policy, but at the market structure, I mean, like to share a little bit of our own view and analysis, and you are familiar with that. We see actually high quality green power to become a scarce resource over the next decade as demand from off-takers like yours and others outgrow supply from new wind and solar asset. How do you see this, and where do you see BASF's role in such a market if it's going to be a seller's market?
Yeah, I think we share this view. We share your view that renewable power will become a scarce resource. At the same time, we welcome the increased renewable build-out targets. Yeah. So as I already mentioned in Germany, but Europe plans 300 gigawatt offshore wind by 2050. Compared to today, to 12 gigawatt, that is an ambitious target. Yeah, and the poses, of course, large challenges for the supply chain and for the developers, as I already mentioned. However, we also see that demand outperforms supply. Increased demand for industry, like ourselves, increased demand for consumers, heat pumps, and so on. Mobility shift toward electrical cars. Yeah. So our conclusion: build out must be pushed by all means. Yeah. Fast permitting, infrastructure investments in grid, build out of capacities in supply chain. Alternatives must be assessed. Yeah. Importing power either directly from, for example, North Africa, or indirectly via energy carriers like green ammonia, green methanol. Yeah. But bottom line, Manuel, Europe is short in energy, and I think we need to find a way to actually to expand our production, our supply side, and importing energy into Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, we're just discussing the long-term view, right? And I guess that's an obvious parallel to the current situation. Maybe as becoming closer to the end of this very interesting conversation, maybe to focus a little bit on the current situation. So the Russian attack on Ukraine has turned energy markets upside down, basically, and produced a supply crunch that hasn't been seen before. What are the takeaways and implications for BASF from a renewables perspective? Did your strategy change as a reaction to this gas supply crunch?
No, I think climate protection continues to be a top priority for BASF, though there nothing changed. BASF remains focused on the energy transition and climate protection. One of the ways to become less dependent on gas supplies from Russia in the future is to accelerate the expansion of renewable energies. So that is somehow confirming our strategy, what we already put in place before the war. And that is part of the solution, what we are doing, to becoming less dependent on fossil fuels. In this regard, BASF has taken a leading role in recent years, and we definitely want to maintain and expand this.
Yeah, makes sense. And I mean, turning a bit to the implications and takeaways for the next few years. We talked a lot about Europe, and then of course the examples in Germany and the Netherlands. Are there specific regions and technologies across the globe that you think will be particularly important to BASF Renewables in the next years?
Yeah, first of all, we think that electrification should come first, and the usage of power in its pure form should be preferred, because this is for us the most, I would say, economical way. Conversion and reconversion, of course, is less efficient when we are talking about hydrogen and ammonia, but of course necessary to transform the whole market. It comes along with higher LCOE and makes only sense in processes where it is extremely hard or even impossible to abate. Hydrogen for hard to abate technologies, e.g. in steel and manufacturing, I think that is very clear. We will need storage, of course. It's very costly at the moment, so we need to work here on the economics. Preferably, we would get access to European green power sources and use that power to decarbonize our European chemical plants. But of course, we have to access the alternatives and see what makes the most sense economically. Therefore, we also look into other options such as hydrogen or other molecules, but these rather as a basis for our chemical production and not for energy production. In addition, several framework conditions for secure global hydrogen supply have to be met, which isn't always easy. So stable political environment is here a key word. Sufficient green power availability, regulatory support, foreign investments must be possible. And I think, of course, we are not looking into Germany or Europe.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I guess the whole situation with the war in the Ukraine has basically let everyone in the industry double down the aspect of security of supply and relationships. If you think about long-term import of important energy carriers like hydrogen from other regions.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. I mean, we are unfortunately coming to a close. I really enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, maybe to round it up, what can you summarize your learnings in a way from working in the energy sector and going along with the energy transformation from the past years? What are the main takeaways from you?
The main takeaways, I think we are on a steep learning curve. And but what we see is renewable energy transformation for European industry can be accomplished. We believe in that, and we will support that as BASF. There's a tremendous motivation of people and companies at the moment, what you can see and feel, and they want to get the job done. It's clearly there's a lot of purpose, and we see it in our company as well. People love to work and love the purpose which is behind that. But on the other hand, the right regulatory framework is needed to achieve targets, and we need to maintain the competitiveness in Europe. That is very important for us, and that is not only for the chemical industry, of course. That here I'm talking for all industries in Europe. Yeah. Technological advancements and innovation is crucial for success of energy transformation. I think here as BASF, we see us in a leading role, and we deliver. And cross-sector collaboration and partnerships are key for achieving our targets. And that is what we already demonstrate in the Netherlands. And that is what we're demonstrating in many other topics as well. So we believe in partnerships to support the transformation. You know, BASF Renewable Company is working on all these topics. Yeah, we built up a great team of young talents and experienced talents. We are working on our IT infrastructure. We have a great European portfolio to run and to optimize. And and then I only can recommend to young talents, check our job openings on LinkedIn or on our company website. I think we love what we do, and we find a lot of purpose, and we hope we bring that all to a big success in Europe. Yeah.
Great, Horatio. Thanks a lot. I mean, I really enjoyed the journey we've been through from bikes to make and buy strategy to the war in Ukraine to opportunities at BASF Renewables, as you pointed out. Horatio, thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Manuel.
That was Manuel Koehler, Aurora's Managing Director for Europe, Middle East and Africa, talking to Horatio Evers, Managing Director, BASF Renewable Energy. Do keep an eye on our podcast feed for more in-depth conversations with senior members of the energy industry. The best way to do this is to subscribe on whatever platform you use. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.